Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We are beginning with our fasting, the month of Ramadan that is approaching. So the first thing is to note down the importance of the month of Ramadan. So the first thing that is obligatory, the ayah which I recited, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that it has been prescribed upon you. Fasting has been prescribed upon you. So it's obligatory. Secondly, it's a pillar of our Islam. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that there are 5 pillars. Buni Islam ala khamsin. One of them is to fast in the month of Ramadan. Number 3, it's the month of Quran. Shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran, where the entire Quran was revealed on Laylatul Qadr. Number 3 is once Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ascended the pulpit, he said Ameen. Took the second step, said Ameen. Third step, he said Ameen. And at every step, Rasulullah was replying to a dua that Jibreel was making against some people. One of them was a person, لمن أدرك Ramadan, a person who witnesses and observes, gains the month of Ramadan, and fails to be forgiven in the month of Ramadan. May this person be destroyed. And Rasulullah said, Ameen. So, the month of Ramadan, it's full of opportunities that a person can gain forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A person can gain closeness and proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If a person fails to utilize this month, then this is the hajj of ingratitude. Thereafter, we see that the month of Ramadan is a month to attain the quality of taqwa. In the ayah that we recited, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. And we see this quality of taqwa, how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded and instructed us to have taqwa. Right? But at the same time, the amount of promises that Allah gives on taqwa. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for example, يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. Allah Ta'ala will create a way out from every difficulty. Allah will provide from avenues that you can't even imagine. Allah will create ease in all of your matters. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the criteria. You can see right from right and wrong from wrong. In like there's so many promises of the quality of taqwa. The month of Ramadan is the month to inculcate within us the quality of taqwa. So as I just wanted to say that the month of Ramadan, it functions like a wake-up call. There's no rewards. Right? The environment is set that a person can strive and inculcate and imbibe the quality of taqwa. However, we see that if Ramadan is not spent in the correct manner, we see that a person will spend Ramadan but will not leave with that which he's supposed to get. And this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned that many people are such that they fast in the month of Ramadan, but they gain nothing but hunger. So this is why it's important that we also look that the Ramadan also has to be spent in a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants for us to spend it. But our deen is so beautiful that all of these actions that we have to do is all encompassed with benefits through and through for us. So we see what are the virtues for the month of Ramadan. We see that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a hadith has mentioned that every action that a human does is multiplied many folds. 10 to 700 times. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that fasting is something that's done exclusively for me and I will give the reward. You can't even imagine the reward. So scholars explain that fasting is such that it's full of sincerity. Because any other action you do, you perform salah, you go to the masjid, right? You give zakah, you go for hajj, you go for umrah. These are things that people can witness. But when you look at fasting, the person next to you doesn't even know that you're fasting. So it's full of sincerity. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the act of fasting. To the point that in the same hadith Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that the breath of a fasting person is more beloved to Allah than musk. And generally when a person is hungry, what happens is from the inside there is a smell that's not so pleasant that comes out. We ourselves don't like that smell. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hadith Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves that smell, and Allah loves a person who's fasting. Why? A person is striving only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Enduring difficulty only for Allah. Similarly, another hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that fasting is a shield, where it protects a person from the fire of Jahannam. It protects a person from many other sins. Another hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that in the month of Ramadan, the doors of paradise are open, the doors of hell are closed, and all the rebellious devils, the shayateen, are all locked up. Meaning the environment is just perfect. All the distractions, all those factors that would pull a person away from Allah, those are blocked off. And those things that would invite and attract a person closer to Allah, meaning the mercy of Allah Ta'ala, is in full force in the month of Ramadan. In another hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that fasting in the Quran, they will come and they will intercede on behalf of a person, and fasting will say that it was because of me that he gave up his food and drink, he gave up his desires. It was because of me. And it will intercede to protect this person from any punishment. You see another hadith that fasting has got within it the power to bring a person's desires under control. Rasulullah has mentioned that when a person cannot control his desires, he should get married. But if he cannot get married, he should fast. Why? Because fasting has got that effect where it brings the desires under one's control. In another hadith, Rasulullah has mentioned that between one salah, one obligatory salah, to the next obligatory salah, all the minuses are expiated or forgiven. Everything is forgiven. And from one Ramadan to the next Ramadan, everything is forgiven as long as a person stays away from the major sins. So we see here, scholars explain, that when the way a person spends Ramadan, this would be a sample of how he will spend the rest of his year. If he'll spend the Ramadan in a noble, righteous way, inshallah, this will be a means of his spending the rest of the year also in a like manner. It means it's very important how we spend our Ramadan. These are the virtues and many other virtues in the ahadith that Rasulullah has mentioned for the month of Ramadan. Now, as we get into the fasting itself, like how we have our salah, we've got our hajj, we've got our zakah, we've got our umrah, everything, our business, everything has been taught to us how we have to do it. And when a person understands the rank or the status of one who he is dealing with, accordingly a person will give due importance in following the rules. So for example, if a person is filling out a document for the government, some application, many times, due to one spelling error, the government will reject the entire application, saying that there's inconsistency or whatever it may be, and they can reject it. But we would understand this when we understand who the government is, what's their rank, what's their status. But if your friend does it to you, you write a message to your friend, you make a spelling error. You ask him, why didn't you come? He said, well, you spelled my name wrong. So who are you, That informality that's wrong, that's what you have between friends. When you understand the rank of who you're dealing with, you give due importance in following their protocol. Similar is the case in our dealing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our obligations. So whether it's salah, whether it's zakah, whether it's our fasting, whether it's our hajj, umrah, whether it's our businesses, whether it's our dealings, all of these things, we've got to understand the awe of Allah, the grandeur of Allah, the majesty of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instructed us to do these actions in this way. We've got to be very particular in giving what Allah wants in the way that Allah wants. So this is why it's important to learn what is the virtues that propel us and motivate us to carry out the action. But at the same time, it's also very important to make sure that we are doing the act the way Allah wants us to do it. And how do we know how Allah wants us to do it? It's by, number one, in the Quran. Number two, the explanation of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The understanding of the Sahaba radiallahu anhu. how they understood it in the context of how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained it, and how the fuqaha and the jurists codified it. Right? So this is how we understand our deen. So before we even go into the rulings, some virtues for learning about our deen. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in one hadith has mentioned that a person who comes to the masjid to learn one chapter of knowledge, whether it's applicable or not, one chapter of knowledge, whether it's applicable or not, is more virtuous for you than performing 1,000 optional units of salah, optional rak'ats of salah. So this is the virtue of learning knowledge. Learning knowledge is very, very virtuous in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So inshallah, when we're going over some rulings, it's the point to be, either for us we know it, we refresh it, whatever rulings it is, or if we don't know it, the intention of learning, and to ensure that we are carrying out this obligation the way Allah Ta'ala wants us. So we'll begin inshallah. We know a soul. Soul is the Arabic word for fasting. Linguistically, meaning the dictionary definition of soul is to abstain. To abstain from something. But the legal meaning the terminology that's used in the context of our deen, it means to fast, but not only that, it means to abstain from eating, number one, drinking, number two, number three is having relations, right, with one's, it should be only with one's spouse, during the daylight hours, meaning from dawn all the way to sunset, with the intention of fasting, performed by one capable and required to do so. Right? So there's three main things that a person has to stay away from. Number one is food, drink, and number three is a person's lawful desires. And this is exactly what the quality of taqwa is all about. When Umar radiallahu anhu, Ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu, that what is taqwa? So Ubayy radiallahu anhu said that, have you ever walked on a path that's full of thorns? You've got these roses and plants that have got thorns on it. He said, yes. He said, how did you walk on that path? He said that I gathered my clothing and I was very watchful of how I put one foot and how I put the other, out of the fear that a thorn should not prick me. So he said that this is the quality of taqwa, that a person spends his every moment in this world being very careful in ensuring that not a single moment is spent in the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when a person is fasting in Ramadan, a person is practicing giving up all those things which are not only lawful, they're also necessities for his survival. You need to drink, you need to eat. There needs to be a survival. And there are virtuous deeds as well, but a person practices giving these acts up for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that after when a person outside of the month of Ramadan, a person sees that how it was easy for him to give up those things which were necessities. It should be a practice to give up all of that which is completely unlawful. Now, upon whom is it obligatory to fast? So number one, a Muslim. Because a non-Muslim is only obliged to accept Islam. And this is why when a person accepts Islam, he does not have to repeat any fast. Why? Because he was never obliged to fast to begin with. So a person accepts Islam when he's 7 years old. He doesn't have to make up any fast. All of his fastings are forgiven, and he begins with a new slate. And now he's going to be obliged to fast. Why? It's because the condition for fasting to be obligatory is to be a Muslim. Number two is to be sane. Right? Meaning not to be insane. A person has got to have the correct mental state to fast. Right? Number three is to be mature. So, to be mature, this is defined as when so either the signs of puberty hit, where a person now gets a wet dream, or if not, then a person hits 15 lunar years, then automatically a person is regarded as mature. So lunar years, which should be around 14 and a half in the Gregorian calendar. So this is when a person becomes obliged to fast. But just like how in performing salah, we have been commanded that by the age of 7, encourage children to perform salah, and by the age of 10, ensure they're fasting, ensure they're performing salah. Why? So that when maturity, they're already habitual with salah. Similar is the case with fasting. Fasting is also obligatory. So already from age, you should already start practicing fasting. So they should be encouraged at the age of 10, they should already be performing and keeping all of the fasts. But once they hit the age of maturity, that is when it starts counting. And if they miss a fast, they're about to repeat the fast. And number 4 is a person who is able to. And we'll get to that in a minute. Who is it not obligatory on? Number 1 is a menstruating woman, meaning a woman who's on her cycles. There's a mistake on the thing. It's not 3 to 8 days. So a woman who's on her cycle. So when a woman is on her cycle, right? So there, rather than fasting, she's not allowed to fast. Right? A woman who's a haid, she's not allowed to fast. And this is why it's very, very important for sisters to make sure that they mark down their monthly habits. Very, very important. Throughout the year, whenever their cycles begin, the exact time it begins, to the exact time that it finishes. Why? Because of the way their cycles work, many times they've got irregular bleeding. But she's not allowed to fast in her days of her cycle. And the cycle is defined as a minimum of 3 days and a maximum of 10 days. And there may be differences of opinion, but this is how it is. So if there's irregular bleeding, she's going to have to refer to her habit. Right? So say she bleeds for 12 days, but her habit is 7 days, she's going to not be obliged, she's not going to be allowed to fast for 7 days. That's a whole discussion altogether. The advice to the sisters is to make sure that they mark down their habits every month. Very, very particular about their habits. Right? Number 2 is that they consult a qualified alima, preferably qualified female scholar, and for any intricate questions that come about, to consult with them and see that, am I supposed to be fasting or am I not supposed to be fasting? Meaning, if she is in her cycle, she's not allowed to fast. And this is exactly what the quality of abdiyat is, servitude. That when Allah wants you to fast, you fast. When He doesn't want you to fast, you don't fast. And this is a task that has been that's specific and confined to our sisters, and for them there's a special reward that men cannot get. So, for example, when Aisha radiallahu anha, when they went for the farewell Hajj, and because her cycle had begun, she could not perform the tawaf. And because of this, the feeling of being left out, she started weeping. And how did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam console her? This is a task that has been prescribed and written for, right, the daughters of Adam alayhi salam. This is their task. This is something that we've got to be very particular about. And they got a special reward in dealing with this task. So the first is that a woman who's on her cycle, she's not allowed to fast. The second is when she's having her postpartum bleeding, which would be the bleeding after childbirth, right, which goes up to a maximum of 40 days. When she's bleeding in this period, she's not allowed to fast as well. And number 3 is, which is optional, is a traveler. But a traveler, regarded as a traveler in our deen. So which is referred to as a person who's traveling, according to some opinions, 48 miles, others say 54, 55 miles. And if a person travels this amount, this distance, and he or she stays in that area for less than 15 days, then they'll be regarded as a traveler. But if you travel to such an area, distance away, and you remain there for 15 days or more, then you're regarded as a muqim, or a person who is a resident. And you will not be given the option of not fasting. When a person is traveling, he's got the option to fast or not to fast. And if it's easy for a person, then he should fast. So this is with regards to a traveler. And we will have a session for questions at the end, inshallah. So this is in a nutshell. The people who are not obliged to fast or who have an excuse not to fast. And the last point is that to have an intention is very necessary. Meaning if a person, the whole day, he did not eat or drink, that's not considered a fast unless it was coupled with the intention of fasting. Right? Meaning for the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala for the month of Ramadan. In here, there is a difference of opinion onto the limit to which a person can fast. Generally, intention is in the heart. You don't say anything, it's in the heart. You wake up for suhoor and you eat, you know you're fasting. Before you went to sleep, you know it's Ramadan, you're going to fast. Right? So your intention is already there. But say a person didn't know it's the first day of Ramadan. Right? So here there's a difference of opinion. In the Hanafi madhab, a person can keep an intention all the way until midday, or Dahwatul Kubra, which would be from the time of dawn to the time of sunset. In between, before this, a person can keep an intention. So say a person never ate, never drank, never did anything that broke his fast, and after the sun rose, he said, oh, it's the month of Ramadan, I'm going to fast. In the Hanafi madhab, he's allowed to do this, as long as he didn't do anything that breaks or constitutes the fast being invalid. So the intention is necessary, everyone agrees with this. It's just a difference of opinion until what point can a person keep the intention. Then you have qada. Anything that invalidates your fast, you've got to make it up. Kafara is the expiation for intentionally nullifying your fast, constituted by breaking the fast with the three things. Either a person intentionally drinks, or intentionally has relations with his spouse or her spouse. So here we can understand, when a person breaks the fast after initiating the fast, it shows more disregard and disrespect for the laws of Allah. That a person began the fast and then he broke it. He had the audacity to break the fast, he's got to give a kafara. So the kafara is to fast for 2 months consecutively without missing a single fast. Without missing a single fast, this is going to be an expiation for such a great mistake. That you commence the fast and then you have the audacity to break it. You have to fast for 2 months consecutively without breaking a single fast in between. And this is why a person has got to commence it in a way that he's able to keep 2 months consecutively. If a person cannot do this, you can't fast 2 months consecutively, health doesn't keep up, then you would have to feed 64 people 2 meals a day. But that is if you cannot do the first, which is to fast for 2 months consecutively. Now, what are those factors that constitute only a qada? Meaning, you only have to make it up. You don't have to do the kafara. So, there's a note that if the fast breaks, it is still not permissible to eat and drink for the rest of the day. So, number one, a person accidentally breaking the fast. What does that mean? A person was, for example, gargling his mouth. He knows he's fasting. He's gargling the mouth. As he's gargling the mouth, the water accidentally goes down. So the water goes down, that means your fast broke. However, it wasn't intentional, so there's no kafara. It's only going to be a qada, only a makeup. But even though you broke the fast, you still got to ensure that you continue fasting. You don't eat or drink for the remainder of the day, so that a person makes sure that he resembles those that are fasting. Everyone is fasting, everyone is keeping a fast. So at least to keep the resemblance with the believers, you should not be eating for the remainder of the day. Number two, injection is administered directly into the stomach or brain. Stomach or brain. Okay. So anything that goes directly into the digestive tract will cause the fast to break. The person has a necessity. Then a person has got to do what he has to do, but it'll break the fast and he has to do a makeup. Number 3, a pump. Person has asthma. If a person does take the pump, it does invalidate the fast. So a person has a necessity, and he's got to take the pump, but he'll have to make it up afterwards. Number 4, intentionally inhales vapor substances like steam from a pot, etc. To intentionally inhale these things, right, will break the fast, but it only constitutes a qada. However, if a person smokes, this will be a qada and a kafara. You'll have to give an expiation as well. Number 5, intentionally vomiting a mouthful. Intentionally vomiting a mouthful, a person puts his finger into the mouth, and he forcefully takes out vomit. And the vomit is so much that you can't contain it in the mouth. This would constitute a qada, meaning the fast breaks. Number 6, insertion of wetness in the rectum of the third private or a female's private, meaning these are the holes in a person's body. A person, if he inserts any wetness inside, that will also be considered as part of the digestive tract, and that will also invalidate the fast. So sometimes for medical procedures, the doctor would have to put something inside that would invalidate the fast, and the qada will have to be kept. Nose and eardrops. So the nose is connected to the digestive tract. So putting something into the nose would cause the fast to invalidate, and the qada will have to be kept. The ear, putting in the eardrops. So classically, traditionally, the scholars have mentioned that it does invalidate the fast. And this would be more precaution, that a person should abstain from using any eardrops or those putting anything through the nose whilst a person is fasting. However, this would constitute only a law. Number 8 is a person masturbating, meaning a person who ejaculates with desire. This would invalidate the fast. So this is a very common question. It's a major sin, and the month of Ramadan is meant that a person curbs these evil habits. But if a person does do this, commit this sin, then the qada will have to be kept, not a kafara. Kafara is only when a person will indulge in actual relations with one's partner. A common question will come to it is a wet dream. If a person wakes up and he sees that he has wet the bed, does he have to make up that fast? No. A wet dream does not invalidate the fast. However, ejaculating with desire does invalidate the fast, and a person will have to keep Allah. Number 9 is a person physically not able to continue. Meaning a person began the fast, but he just cannot continue. A person is having those conditions where a person cannot continue the fast. Such a person will have to break, he is allowed to break the fast, but he'll have to keep a qada and a makeup. Common acts that do not invalidate. The one is forgetfully breaking. Many of us may have known the hadith that Allah Ta'ala feeds a person and gives a person to drink. Right? So this is referring to a person forgets. What's the difference? A person forgot he's fasting and he started drinking and eating. Meaning he didn't know he's fasting. This is a contrast to what we mentioned before, an accident, the difference. Right? One is khata and one is nisyan. Khata, a mistake is when a person knows he's fasting, but he took it right down, like probably. But when a person forgets, he forgot that he's fasting. Right? This is what the hadith says, that Allah has given this person food and drink. The scholars explain that if you know that the person is able to continue with this obligatory fast, then you have to inform him that it's Ramadan. You can't be eating. But if a person is very weak, then there is the way that you don't even remind him that it is Ramadan and fasting. Number 2, food stuck in a teeth that is small in the size of a kidney. That's already in the mouth. A person began to fast and he had some things in the mouth, some particles of food. A person began to stutter straw. As he began to stutter straw, there's these particles of food that are exiting. And they gather in his mouth and he swallows them. So the scholars say that if they are lower, smaller than the size of a chickpea, then it does not invalidate the fast. And that's if it was already in the mouth, meaning it's not that it was stored and it was brought into the mouth, it was already in the mouth. Number 3 is things that cannot be avoided, such as water that remains after gargling. So some people have this waswasa problem where every time they put water in the mouth, they're constantly spitting. This is not necessary. Water that remains in the mouth after a person gargles being wudu, that is overlooked. Right? Anything else that cannot be avoided without undue difficulty. Number 4, blood in the saliva. A little bit of blood in the saliva does not break the fast, as long as it's not so much that if you were to spit, the blood overpowers the saliva. You need to bleed profusely, and you shouldn't be. You should make sure that you rinse them off until the blood stops. Number 5 is vomiting unintentionally, like you mentioned, or a person intentionally, but it wasn't a mouthful. Number 6, smoke entering unintentionally. So there was, the person in the shower, and there's steam in the shower. Right? As long as you're not intentionally inhaling, that will not invalidate the fast. Right? Anything else that's with regards to steam and smoke, that does not invalidate the fast if it is unintentional. So they say we dust, applying oil, surma, right? This is what we know as the kohol, to put on the eye. Right? That will not invalidate the fast, as well as eye drops. That will not invalidate the fast. Insulin will not invalidate the fast because it doesn't connect to anything with the digestive tract. IV, a person has to go IV, that does not invalidate the fast. A person should abstain from using it if there's no necessity. Covering does not invalidate the fast. Sins like backbiting does not invalidate the fast, but it diminishes the reward. And intention to break the fast doesn't break the fast. Right? I intend to break. If you didn't break it, it doesn't. A wet dream does not break the fast. As for dislike, makruhat, to chew anything, something that doesn't have any flavor or any substance, to chew it is makruh, is dislike. To taste something and spit it out. You don't let anything go down. You spit it on your tongue, you spit it out. Is dislike. To collect a person's saliva continuously and drink it as if you're drinking something. It's dislike, won't break the fast. To intentionally delay ghusl until after dawn is dislike. Right? Meaning a person has to take a obligatory shower, but after the time of further commences, a person delays it. This is something dislike. To use toothpaste, very common question. It's dislike to use toothpaste and things like of this nature. Why? Because if you were to swallow it, it breaks your fast. So to put anything in your mouth like this, it's something that you should abstain from. Anything that would jeopardize your fast. So, just an announcement that please ensure that there is silence, especially upstairs, so that those that are trying to listen can comfortably listen. Whoever wants to talk can go in the adjacent room or outside, inshallah. So one way that we go about cleansing the mouth is that right before the time of Fajr we brush our teeth. Right? Or we can use the miswak or a tongue scraper, right? No substance to it, or even just using a brush without any substance added to it. In this way, you can take care of the oral hygiene. But to use toothpaste is dislike. It won't break the fast unless it goes down. Number 6, to complain of hunger and thirst whilst a person is fasting is something dislike. To quarrel or to use filthy language is dislike when a person is fasting. Rasulullah has instructed us that we should say, anyone that tries to initiate or instigate anything, say that I'm fasting. A hungry man is an angry man, right? So a person tends to have these bouts that a person should control. To backbite, lie, etc., any sin is dislike, diminishes the reward. To exaggerate, gargling, including the nose, is dislike. So when a person has to take a obligatory shower, you've got to make sure you gargle thoroughly and put water in your nose. However, precaution must be taken when a person is fasting. And you shouldn't do it as extensively as you would normally do. These are dislike. What are valid excuses for when a person cannot fast? Sickness that will worsen or be delayed if the fast is kept. Person is sick, right? It will worsen or the recovery will be delayed if you kept the fast. However, you've got to have some criteria, right? A person feels a little bit of a fever or something, right? That won't. A person has got to follow the criteria. One of the criteria that the Fuqaha mentioned is it must be determined by one thing. Number one, an upright, expert Muslim physician. So number one is he's got to be an expert in his field. He's got to know what he's talking about. He's got to make sure that he knows that if a person is going to fast, it's going to be detrimental to his patient's health. So he's got to be an expert in the field. Right? Number two is he's got to be a Muslim as well as upright. Why is this important? Is because remember, fasting is an obligation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it can be dismissed on feeble excuses. So a physician who has got the fear of Allah and he knows that I'm going to be held accountable in the word of Allah, he is going to have some sort of hesitancy and some sort of accountability in giving a person the leeway that he does not have to fast. So this consciousness and awareness of accountability in the word of Allah, this is important. This is why it's got to be an upright Muslim physician. Right? To make sure that, that it's a valid excuse. Number two, it's relevant experiences. Meaning a person, he knows that I've got this condition and previously I couldn't fast. I've got the same condition now. So from experience, you know that you can't fast. Number three is there are clear signs. I mean, a person you know you can. Then it's obvious. So these are the criteria by which you will generally see what's a valid excuse for not fasting. Pregnant or nursing women, what about that? They're expected to fast on this legitimate harm for herself or the baby. But why is this important? Because sometimes the woman is pregnant, she's still in her initial stages. She can really tell that she's pregnant. She says, I'm pregnant, I can't fast. So this is not, just because a woman is pregnant, doesn't mean that she is excused from fasting, because obviously it's 9 months. And there's varying degrees and levels of conditions. So it'll be going back to, is it viable for her to fast or not? She's also got to take care of number one, her own self, and number two is for the health of the baby as well. So once again, we'll get the three criteria that I mentioned. For a menstruating woman, if it starts during the day, she should eat in a manner that no fasting person sees her eating. Right? Meaning, if it starts during the day, let's say at 11 a.m., her cycle started. She started bleeding. So now, she's not fasting anymore. It's permissible for her to eat. Right? It's not lawful for her to fast. But when she does eat, she should ensure that she does it and no one can see her. Right? And if it stops during the day, at 11 a.m., she stopped bleeding. Then she must abstain from eating and drinking. Why? Is because her excuse for not fasting is no longer found. So she should resemble the normal believer, not normal, but it is the general Muslim population of fasting in the month of Ramadan. So she should also imitate them and abstain. A traveler, person travels, we said 48 or 54, 55 miles in less than 15 days. 15 days. So, if you're at home at the time of Fajr, then you have to fast that day. If you're at home at the time of Fajr, then you have to fast that day. Why? Because the excuse of fasting is not found. But if a person is fasting at the time of Fajr, then a person has the option of fasting, not to fast. However, it's preferable that a person fast. Exams, school, work are not valid excuses. Just no salah can be compromised because of an exam that's coming up, or because of school, or because of work. Similarly is the case with fasting. Rather, a person should prepare and plan from before. Right? So, before the fast, person knows that there's a big exam coming up. Make sure that you try and delay the exam if it's possible. Right? Or make sure that you're thoroughly nourished. Whatever it may be, you try and adjust. But it's not a valid excuse for that fasting. For working, if a person has got tired day, then before the month of Ramadan, try and work out a schedule with the employer, with the organization, with the company, and try to make sure that in the month of Ramadan there's less hours work, less tedious work, and so on, to ensure that Ramadan is spent in the way where a person is able to. Now, this is opposite to a person is already fasting, and then a person cannot continue. Then it comes back to what we already mentioned in terms of looking at the criteria for when it becomes permissible to break the fast. What's a fidya? If there's no hope of fasting, such as due to an unrecoverable continuous illness or old age, then you would have to feed one poor person 2 meals for each fast. Meaning, a person has been diagnosed, right, with an illness that doesn't look like there's going to be a remedy for. Such a person will then be excused from fast. However, say for example, it's a summer day. You can't fast on a summer day, but you could fast in the short days in the winter. You won't pay the fee, you have to keep the fast in the short days. Right? Because you can make up the fast. The fidya amount is also equivalent to the fitr amount, whenever that will be announced by the masjid. If a person thought he wasn't going to recover, and he ends up recovering, a person will have to repeat and make up the fast that he had missed, but inshallah will have a separate reward for the amount that he gave in. If a person doesn't have the amount, or he's not paying the fidya amount right now, he'll also have to give the wasiyah and bequest. And when I pass away, then from 1/3 of my estate, the fidya amount must be discharged. Right? The person didn't make the wasiyah, didn't make the bequest, and the heirs did on their own accord, they agree amongst themselves, then inshallah there's hope from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Eating suhoor. Now there's a lot of virtues for eating suhoor. We're going to go a little bit fast. Number one, there's barakah. It's a difference between our fast and the fast of the people of the book. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able to send blessing upon the people that eat suhoor, the pre-non-meal. And when they're actually eating, be just a sip of water. Right? The purpose of fasting is to feel the hunger. So a person shouldn't overeat on both ends. Another point is adhan does not always happen at the exact time of Fajr. And we're going to go into a bit of detail. What we're going to mention is just for information's sake. A person has a different opinion, that's completely fine, but one is to understand the opinion that we do follow, that our Muslim advocates what we got on our timetables, and to understand that there's basis for all the opinions that are adhered to. What is imsak? On our timetables, we have imsak 5 minutes before. See that in the narration of Bukhari and Muslim, we see that they refer to the one narrative that we had the pre-dawn meal, the suhoor with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then we got up to pray. Right? The sub-narrator, meaning the narrator narrating from Zayd, said, I asked how much time was there between the two? Meaning, between the suhoor and between commencing of the fast, he said 50 verses. Meaning the amount it takes to recite 50 moderate verses. So this is why we have been told that it's virtuous to delay the suhoor. The scholars explain that it should be in the 1/6 portion of the night. Meaning, a person wakes up and eats the suhoor. It's not that a person in the middle of the night or before sleeping eats the suhoor, should delay it. However, there should be a precaution before the time of Fajr, where a person gives a bit of a gap. Like has been understood from this narration. One other beautiful point is that we see that how they used to create how they used to identify time with ibadat. You know, it doesn't, we would say 50 minutes, they say 50, how long it takes to recite 50 verses. Scholars explain 50 modern verses can be recited in 5 to 10 minutes. Between that time. Fajr time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that you may eat and drink until you see the light of dawn breaking the darkness of light. Meaning, you've got the horizon. When you see the brightness on the horizon, that means that now the Fajr time has commenced. You can no longer eat. Okay? Visual observation is the original and undeniable method. You look at the horizon and you see. Common obstacles that would hinder a person's observation of the horizon is light and air pollution, as well as trees, clouds, and bad weather. Why am I mentioning this? Is for us living in a metropolitan city, there are so many factors that hinder our observation of the horizon as compared to a person in an urban city, right? Where a person is looking directly at the horizon with no obstructions. What they're going to see, what we're going to see, there's going to be a difference. So this is why we look at this chart a little bit blurry. We see there's varying degrees. You have before sunrise, obviously we all know, sunrise doesn't happen in a split second, it's gradual. There is a little bit of light that comes, then it slowly, gradually decreases, until it becomes very light, with a lot of light, until you see the actual portion of the sun coming along. So this is when we have 18 degrees, 15 degrees, and different degrees. You may have heard of this. So there is what we know as false dawn, which is known as a vertical white light that appears on the horizon. This is called Fajr Ghaib. This is what we know as the time where Fajr does not commence. That is what is marked off as the zodiacal light. After that, you got the astronomical twilight, which happens at 18 degrees. Right? And then after the nautical twilight, then you have the civil twilight, then you have sunrise. So basically, you got 18 degrees, then 12 degrees, then 6 degrees. When does Fajr time begin? Obviously, for us, it's going to be observations. When do we see the white line on the horizon? Okay. So if we look, there are some differences inside here. We can all make a aside in our locality. Fajr time begins at different times. This is a valid cause of concern. When do we begin and commence our fast? So if we look, the World Organization, the Muslim World League's international organization, they adhere to 18 degrees. You'll see that on the 20th, yesterday, their Fajr time was at 5:40. Egyptian General Authority survey is 19.5 degrees. They went a little bit earlier, 5:33, meaning even before that. Right. The University of Islamic Sciences, Karachi, 18 degrees, 5:40. You have Qura and Baghdad, they adhere to 18.5, which works out to 5:38. It's ISNA, which is the Islamic Society in North America, which adheres to the 15 degrees calculation. And in North America, this is the default on our apps, on our phones, and they decided to adhere to it. And for all their own opinion. But you see 5:45, 5:54 a.m. So it's later, because it's 15 degrees, which is later than 18 degrees. So there is this discrepancy, this difference. There's many bodies of ulama that have gone out to observe and how they have observed on North American soil, and they went out to be as unbiased as possible without knowing the time, and everyone observing, no one sharing down their details, and they have all put on that it was around 18 degrees. So 18 degrees is the safest, and for us, it's only a matter of 14 minutes. So the safest is that a person adheres to 18 degrees. Why? Is because there have been people that have observed it to be 18 degrees. And it's a matter of only 14 minutes. The reason why I mentioned about those obstructions is that many times a person will try and attempt to observe the horizon, but because of these obstructions that we have nowadays, especially light pollution, what happens is we're not able to credibly identify exactly when the first amount of light appears on the horizon. Right? So the safest is that it person appears to 18 degrees. Right? The Islam, the head of it, Dr. Zulfikar Ali Shah, in 2011 they also said that they were going to go back to 17.5. Allah Alam what happened thereafter, but they still do adhere to 15 degrees. The safest is that person adheres to 18 degrees. That's what happens to us. You can see a glimpse of what light pollution looks like. With the light pollution, without light pollution. With the light pollution, you see a glow of light. This is in our area, right? What we're going to see is we're going to have these obstructions, some consequences. There was just a reminder to please ensure silence. There's a video on YouTube where a person documented the horizon, and they marked astronomical twilight, nautical twilight, right, civil twilight, and at astronomical twilight on the video you can't see any light. There were many people that said, "Look, there's no light." If we look in the comment section, the person who put up the video himself, he himself mentioned that yes, I could see light with the naked eye throughout the astronomical twilight, but my camera was not so sensitive to record it. Meaning, with the naked eye, you can see it. There have been people that have observed it on the eastern coast, on the western coast. It's a lot of ihtiyat and precaution that a person adheres to the 18 degrees. Every person wants to, whatever a person would like, as long as there's understanding that why we are following and why there is differences in our timetables. And it's not something of fiqh, it's more of observations. Just a point on that note is that on our books, throughout our eras, and many of our fuqaha that were into the field of astronomy, they always just, the term of 18 degrees always features. That's also very good of note. Then you have the, in order to be careful in terms of their time, due to many other factors, you should add a couple of minutes. So this is why in our timetables, we can see that there's a discrepancy between the sunset time and the actual listed time on our timetables. And this is not, it's not fiqh. It's not in terms of a difference of opinion between fuqaha. This is in terms of observations in the science of astronomy with regards to the sunset time that we will all take in terms of what we look at on our phones and on our apps, and then looking at what they themselves are saying in terms of the listed time. When a person is fasting, a person should ensure that a person abstains from all sins. A person protects the ears, the eyes, the tongue, the belly, etc. And this is to ensure that the fast is carried out in a manner not only that in terms of legally it's acceptable, but also spiritually. Right? There's a lot more that we're going to go on. Quickly, we'll run through the important points. We see that salah is something that features inside of Ramadan. And just how in fasting, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned, many people are those that stand and perform salah, but they gain nothing but tiredness and the discomfort of remaining awake at night. So this is why Ramadan should be taken as an opportunity to work on our salah, to improve the quality of our salah, right? And to make an effort on our salah. And this is why we have the Taraweeh. With regards to Taraweeh, the debate, 20 rakats, 8 rakats, understand that in our masjid we do 20 rakats. It's not that there's no basis for it, right? There is the fiqh behind it of why we do it. And whether a person is doing 20 or 80, it shouldn't be a cause of disunity. Like all fiqh matters, the reason why a person is adopting to a certain opinion is because of that rich legacy behind it. So for example, the 20 rakat opinion is from the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, Uthman, Ali radiallahu anhu. And with regards to the ahadith that talk about 8 rakats, we say that that is mahmud and that is talking about the tahajjud of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not the Taraweeh. And this is why we say that there's 20 rakats. Person wants to perform 8 rakats, that's fine. Person can do it. It's sunnah, emphasize sunnah. It shouldn't be a cause of disunity. However, the most important thing is that a person performs the Taraweeh salah with the spirituality. It shouldn't be that a person is worried about the time or getting it over with, or a person creates a celebrity culture, right? Chasing behind the most beautiful voices or who got that. It should be the spirituality behind it, that a person is devoting himself to the salah. And similarly, a person should try and endeavor to complete and listen to the entire Quran being recited in Taraweeh salah. So meaning a person is punctual and very particular in ensuring that the entire Quran is heard in the Taraweeh salah. It's preferable to perform witr after the Taraweeh, and it's sunnah to perform it in jama'ah. So many a times we know that the hadith say that a person should make the witr salah the last salah of the night. But in Ramadan, it's preferable that a person performs the witr salah in congregation. As well as all the optional salahs, we should try and endeavor to perform those throughout the day. The noble Quran, the month of the Quran, allow ourselves to create a connection with the Quran, and we should all try and endeavor to make one completion of the Quran in the month of Ramadan, looking inside and reading. Right? Many of the scholars of our past, how many completions of the Quran they would make? Right? 40 completions, 60 completions of the entire Quran. Right? Imam Shafi'i, Imam Bukhari, rahimahullah. And even in recent times, we see people, right, that complete. I've seen my teachers, right, that would complete an entire recitation of the Quran every day of Ramadan. So this is completely doable if a person manages his time. Dua. When a person, the month of dua, generally what happens is a person becomes exhausted, or a person becomes, there's this dryness that comes about. A person doesn't have the feelings in a person's dua. There's so many times where du'as are accepted, especially before a person breaks his fast. So, a person should have a priority list, meaning,
You know how when a person places an order on Amazon or something, after you place your order, you're expecting something. Before the month of Ramadan, have your priority list where you are going to beg Allah for these few things that you need, so that you have the expectation of receiving them, right? After the month of Ramadan. It's that anticipation and the feeling inside of our du'as. The time between Asr and Maghrib Salah should be utilized, right? Especially for the sisters. And we can read from compilations, dua compilations, get ideas of what du'as to make. And like this, a person makes an effort on du'as as well. Additional acts, the person can give sadaqah daily. Right? We know that Laylatul Qadr, the night that's better than 1,000 months. We'll speak more about that in the month of Ramadan. But if a person gives sadaqah every night, then he's definitely going to get Laylatul Qadr. So like this, a person gives sadaqah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the most generous out of all people, and he was even more generous in the month of Ramadan. And then the reward of giving a person to break a fast is a person gets the full reward of the person who was fasting. So to also feed people in the month of Ramadan, similarly to abstain from anything doubtful. The person doesn't break his fast on anything doubtful. And to make dhikr, one narration, to recite La ilaha illallah, to recite astaghfirullah, to seek Jannah and refuge from Jahannam. So these 4 acts. Abstain from quarreling. One is to work on our ibadat, but also to work on our akhlaq, right? To work on our character. And then regular reflections to see how we are spending the month of Ramadan, and to make sure that we're spending it in a way which is very productive. Read virtues of the month of Ramadan to motivate us, virtues of doing good actions, and read the stories of the pious. Similarly, to be very careful in terms of our nutrition, that our consumption of the foods that we take is also in a way that we are able to sustain and have a healthy Ramadan, so that we're taking care of our bodies as well. Sleep early whilst being considerate of spouses and relatives at the same time. These are just some acts. So if there's any questions, I know we did cover a lot in terms of the fiqh. You can scan the QR code or go on slido.com and punch in the code 2920877. This is, inshallah, we'll try to cover whatever we can. I know it's late. Or you can email the email over there and I'll get back to you, inshallah, in due time, which is hadithqa@gmail.com. So anybody that has any questions can ask. We'll give just a couple of minutes for it, inshallah. Inshallah, we'll look at the questions. If anyone has any questions, they can ask. Otherwise, the email, inshallah, I'll get back to you. But if we missed years of fasting because we were in practice Muslim when we were younger, how do we expiate that? So a person would have to plan himself in making it up. Obviously, it would be hard to fast all in one shot. And this is why the scholars say that when a person wears the ihram and he's going for Hajj and he passes away, he'll be raised amongst the Hujjaj. So similarly, when a person is making the effort, inshallah, there's hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that a person will be able to, a person would be considered as a person who made up all the fast. But a person would have to create a plan on how he can, or how they can comfortably make up all the fast of any missed fast. The second question is, if a woman's cycle starts closer to iftar, would that count as qada? Yes. So same thing, like how a person accidentally drinks water right before iftar, he has to repeat the fast. Similarly, this is something that's, like I mentioned, a test for our sisters. There's only a couple of minutes left and their cycle begins. That is something that they will have a special reward for. And remember, Allah Ta'ala looks at the hearts and He knows all the sacrifices that are made from the heart. So inshallah, have anticipation of a special reward from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. But yes, that day would have to be repeated. If you were in a pool and you were fasting and you accidentally swallowed some pool water, would it break your fast? Yes. Accidents break your fast. If a traveler is going to travel for over 15 days and for over 54 miles, do they need to fast the first 14 days or do they fast none of the days? It's an option to fast or not if you are traveling. But like I mentioned, if it's easy to fast, nowadays it's very easy to fast while you're traveling, you should fast, right? To gain the rewards, the virtues of the month of Ramadan, the blessings of the month of Ramadan, you should definitely fast if you're able to do so. However, you are excused from a Shari'i point of view for not fasting. Can the six fast of Shawwal be used as a makeup for Ramadan? Yes, but it would be more virtuous to keep the 6 fast of Shawwal separate. Right? If nose drops breaks fast, why eye drop cannot break? Eyes connected to nose by a duct. This is how the fuqaha have mentioned that there is a distinction between the nose and the eye and the connection with the eyes directly to the digestive tract. So because of that, the fuqaha have mentioned that is what has been mentioned. Can you have 2 intentions for one day of fasting? Not in any obligatory fast. So you can't fast in an obligatory fast and a makeup fast at the same time, right? If you fast in the month of Ramadan, it'll only be for the obligatory fast of the month of Ramadan. Yes, optional fast can be many intentions. Does each piece of food in the mouth have to be smaller than the chickpea or the combined size? The combined size. So all the pieces in the mouth, you gather them and you would estimate that does it feel like it is the size of a chickpea. Someone died before doing qada of missing days. Is there anything that his family can do? So a person has outstanding fast. The family should give, if he never gave any wasiyah or bequest, then if all the heirs agree, right? Because the inheritance is the right of everyone. If everyone agrees, then from the person's estate, a person can give some wealth, right, as expiation for those missed fasts, and there's hope in reward from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Or if you don't give from the estate, you give from your own side, inshallah, there's hope from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Does backbiting or speaking ill require makeup qada fast? No, it doesn't require a qada, but it drains the rewards of the fast. So, right, just like in salah, a person doesn't have concentration in salah, you don't have to repeat that salah, but the essence, the spirit of the salah is lost. Is tarawih at masjid or salah at home better for women? This is a more detailed discussion. The fuqaha mentioned, the fuqaha mentioned that for sisters to come to the masjid, it's better. So Rasulullah has mentioned the hadith that it's more virtuous for a sister to perform salah at home. This is an authentic hadith, and this is why every salah of hers, it'll be more virtuous for her to perform it at home, just like tarawih salah. If there is a cause of fitna, there is mixing that's taking place, then it's impermissible because there's haram taking place. However, if there's no haram, then it would be preferable for them to perform salah at home. However, you also got, it's very nuanced, right? Context-wise, if a person comes with the proper hijab, there's no fitna, there's no makeup, there's no perfume, and in this way, then a person shouldn't be too strict. This is why we do have accommodation for sisters. It's not so strict. People have different backgrounds, right? Different scenarios. So yes, it is preferable for sisters to perform all of their salahs at home, right? But it is permissible for them to come so long as that there's nothing impermissible in their coming. Is it permissible to gargle the mouth intentionally without the purpose of ghusl while fasting? Like we mentioned, to unnecessarily do it is disliked. Is a person doesn't keep connection with kinship like severing family ties, will his fast be accepted? I heard some hadith regarding this. Inshallah, his fast will be accepted, but this is with regards to the spirituality and the rewarding of the fast. Can a person gain no reward? Allah Ta'ala is the full judge. But does he have to repeat the fast in terms of fiqh-wise? No. You don't have to repeat the fast because this act doesn't invalidate the fast. However, it's a major sin. Does the extra water left in the mouth break the fast after wudu? We mentioned this. Obviously, you spit out, but then anything that's going to remain, that's overlooked. Meaning what's going to remain after you spit out the water. If you have migraines, are we excused from fasting? Does that count as illness? This goes back to the criteria that we mentioned before, right? About either it's clear you can't continue, or experiences, or what's the essential criteria is the expert in the field as well as awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fear of Allah ta'ala. When such a person says that yes, you're excused from fasting, then you're excused from fasting. Is witr in Jamaat after Tarawih or after Tahajjud better? We mentioned this. Witr in Ramadan, it's preferable to perform witr in congregation. Okay, we'll give 2 more minutes and then we'll stop at 40, inshallah. Is it okay to be intimate with wife without doing intercourse? If a person has control over himself, yes. Very important. If a person swallows the saliva of his wife or husband, that invalidates the fast as well as kafara. It's like eating. You have to be very careful about that. Otherwise, if a person is being intimate without the actual act, then if a person has control over his desires, then it's permissible as long as a person doesn't ejaculate, right? Otherwise, that would break the fast. And then doing the actual deed would cause a kafara. Does nail polish affect fasting? No, as long as you don't eat the nail polish or something. But nail polish with regards to our wudu, that's a separate discussion. If it prevents water from reaching the skin, then wudu, that's an issue with regards to wudu. Inshallah, 1 more minute, we'll just look. So eye drops don't break the fast. Do not break the fast, eye drops, like we mentioned before. Eye drops do not. Can women taste food while fasting? So we mentioned, so tasting food and swallowing food is different, right? You put something on your tongue, you don't swallow it, but you tasted it. We mentioned that it's disliked, right, to taste. However, some fuqaha mentioned that if the husband is very hot-tempered, right, then for them the dislikeness would also fall away. But it's makruh, it's disliked to taste food. Okay, inshallah. We will end it with that. Any other questions, you can email it, inshallah, and I'll get back to you, inshallah. Besides this, we say that before the month of Ramadan, we've got to ensure that one is, we said the legal aspects, but also the spiritual aspects. There's so much that I wanted to speak about in terms of the spiritual aspects. Inshallah, maybe we can do it when Ramadan commences, when I do the after Asr sessions. We'll speak about how to make the most of our Ramadan in terms of practical steps. Our lives have become very lazy. We're so habitual with so many ill habits. It's not that we don't have time, we're wasting that time, right? And then we're screaming when we're having fights at home when we don't have time for our wives, right? The reason is because we're not managing our time properly. We're not being productive with our time, and we need to start building this. We are defined as we are with our habits. So inshallah, we'll speak about that when Ramadan commences after Asr Salah. There is a request for dua. One of our brothers here, Brother Labib from Libya, last week his mother passed away, so he is requesting us to make dua for her maghfirah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant her the highest stages of Jannah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make her grave a garden from the gardens of paradise. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevate her status, forgive all of her sins. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this gathering. May Allah ta'ala bless us with the ability to spend Ramadan in a way that's pleasing to Him. So a request is that the food is here, it's already placed, so inshallah we're not going to delay any further. However, we make the intention of i'tikaf before we eat in the masjid. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from Allah. Subhanallah bihamdi, subhanallah bihamdi, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.